All right, everybody. It's time for another story time with Uncle Gonzo. And I have a special treat. I actually wrote a short story just for this bit here. I'm trying something different. We'll see how it works. It's a horror story, though, so those who are expecting a story about puppies and kittens, this one's not really for you. It's a horror story, just so you know, before you continue watching. I have lots of stupid videos about lots of other stupid things, if you prefer. But I just wrote it, and I'm gonna read it, and I'll put some stuff on the screen so you won't get too bored. Okay? All right. The Orphan. The pitch black seas roared and thundered around the octagonal inflatable orange life raft. Flashes streaking across the sky in the darkness flickered in through the small tent-like opening in the life raft covering. Sam clumsily grasped a rope attached to the interior of the raft with his oversized mitten of a hand. The cold water immersion survival suit covered everything but Sam's face. It was cumbersome and ill-fitting, but it was the only thing besides the emergency raft that was keeping him alive. Commonly called a Gumby suit, it was a barrier against the freezing waters of the Bering Sea and the raw, indifferent forces of nature. Sam was anything but warm, but at least most of his body was dry. He couldn't feel his face except for when the cold water came flooding or whipping in through the opening that he could barely tie shut. The oversized hands of his Gumby suit had no dexterity. Adding fingers to something like that would increase the surface area and encourage heat loss. The raft pitched and careened upon the vicious waters. Sometimes Sam felt like he was free falling. Other times he could feel the raft heaving upwards as a monstrous wave lifted it skyward. Right now, the raft was spinning. Laying on his back, Sam instinctively put his hand over his right shirt pocket. Under all his layers, he always kept a photo of his girls. When you live the life of a fisherman, you have to have something physical to hold on to. He had the printed out copy of a digital memory laminated so no matter how choppy the seas, it would remain intact. He closed his eyes and tried to remember what warmth was like as he remembered his girls. Anna had fussed about posing for the photo. She was feeling self conscious because of the baby weight she was having trouble losing. It didn't matter to Sam. She'd always be the girl in the yellow sundress that lived down the lane. He remembered sitting on a porch swing, building up the nerve to hold her hand, and now they had a baby girl. At a year and a half old, little baby Jane was his miracle. Grasping his finger with her tiny hand as they walked to the park together that day, she rapidly fired questions at him. "What keeps the clouds in the sky, Daddy?" she would ask. "It's just the rain trying not to fall," he replied. She wrinkled her little nose and looked skyward, the little freckles across her face, a perfect replica of her mother's. Anna's dark hair and fair skin were already turning red that hot day. Getting ready, she had forgotten to pack sunscreen. The sky rippled and roared as Sam was viciously pulled back into the moment. The seas heaved the life raft and was sent careening like a roller coaster cart. Sam was floating in the air for a brief moment, then he felt an impact like landing on unforgiving pavement. It knocked the wind out of him and caused him to momentarily let go of the rope that was his only means of staying in the same place on the raft. He slid across the wet, slippery bottom of his meager sanctuary. Waves pumped gallons of icy water into the inflatable craft. Sam rolled over on his stomach to flail around, looking in the pitch black for the umbilical rope running around the interior of the raft. He felt it and grabbed it with both blunted hands. Rolling over onto his back again, he caught his breath. Some water had slipped past the Gumby suit seal around his face. His rain gear underneath helped him repel most things, most times, but now was not most times. He wondered about the rest of the crew. 6 men plus the captain had been aboard the Northwest Passage. Fishing for cod and crab on the Bering Sea was so dangerous they made a television show about it. Sam had never watched the show. He preferred reading books when he got any free time at all. Also, he had lived this life for 23 years. He didn't need to stare at the pitching waters when he was safe at home. They had just set the last pot in a string, and they all waddled across the pitching deck towards the locker room. The deck was lit with massive sodium lights, making it as bright as day in the starless night. They were beaten and worn to the nub. Hurricane force winds were bearing down on the entire fleet, so they had worked for over 24 hours straight to get their pots in the water before the storm caught up with them, too. The waves had been crashing over the bow like falling hammers on their backs. Sam was now in his 40s, and his life had been hard on his body. Just as he got into the locker room, he heard the intercom phone ringing. He knew the captain was calling down to have a word with him. He ignored the phone and walked straight into the cabin area without even taking off his gear. Captain Chris, as they called him, wasn't a bad captain. For a salty, hard man, he was usually quite easy to get along with. But something was different this trip. He was being impossible to please. Everything they did on deck seemed to piss him off. He'd been micromanaging and nitpicking constantly, and, as deck boss, Sam was bearing the brunt of whatever had set off the captain. His ears felt hot as he took large strides towards the stairs that led to the bridge. He needed food and sleep. He was beyond tired and had enough of Captain Chris's bullshit. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, and he fell back down the stairs he had almost ascended. Landing on his back, he cursed at the top of his lungs just as everything went black with a thunderous bang. In a moment of confusion, he lay there for a brief moment before the emergency red lighting kicked in. His eyes were wide as seawater came pouring through the stairwell upon him. Without thinking, he jumped up and climbed the stairs as fast as he could as the ship violently listed to port. Up on the bridge, he paused for a heartbeat as the carnage took him aback. All the forward-facing reinforced windows were smashed, and nothing could be seen but blackness outside. The red light showed Captain Chris on the floor and out of his chair. All feuds were instantly forgotten as Sam knelt down to see to the captain. He was unconscious, and even in the red floodlight, Sam could tell he was bleeding. A giant gash had ripped its way down Chris's face. Sam went into emergency mode, and the endless drills he had been put through for his 20-plus years kicked in. The ship had lost power and was being thrown violently around by the storm. A rogue wave must have slammed into the ship so hard the reinforced windows had turned to confetti. The engine room was probably flooded and the generators were down. This was a worst-case scenario. He stood up and tried to see the deck outside to look for survivors, but there was no light. There was no time to try and raise everyone on the intercom. It was probably down anyway. First things first, deal with the problem right in front of you, he said to himself. He went to the emergency cabinet and threw it open. He grabbed 2 bright orange Gumby suits. Laying on the floor, he climbed in and pulled the huge zipper up to his nose and fastened the protective hood. Next, he grabbed the other Gumby suit and laid it out as well. He then grabbed Captain Sam under his arms to lift him up so that he could put him in the survival suit. That was when the world turned upside down. Sam was a tough son of a bitch, but no one could fight the raw force of Mother Nature. The surge of water pouring into the bridge kicked Sam in the chest. It slammed him against the door that led outside. It gave way immediately and threw him out like a bullet from a gun. Sam flailed for anything to grab onto, but instead he was plunged into the ocean. Completely confused under the waves, he tried to swim upwards. Without any point of reference, he couldn't tell up from down. His lungs burned as he desperately yearned for air. Then, just as he thought it was over for him, his head broke the surface. The survival suit was doing its job. He was floating on the waves. He craned his neck around, fighting the stiffness of the survival suit, trying to see something, anything in the black. Somewhere under the waves, he could see the red lights fading fast. Then lightning shot across the sky, illuminating the Northwest Passage, broken and sinking with the aft unnaturally pointing towards the sky. The fear was like a knife in his heart. Would the Northwest Passage suck him down with her? He waved his arms, trying to control his buoyancy and swim away from the sinking ship. It was then his salvation exploded out of the churning seas. The emergency lifeboats were kept in barrels bolted to the exterior of the ship. In the event they were submerged, they were designed to blow apart, letting the auto-inflating life rafts break free and head to the surface. Sam desperately paddled towards the white pulsating strobe on the outside of the raft. His protected hands slipped around the rubbery hull until he found purchase and heaved himself into the raft. Squeaking and slipping, he began to call out for his crewmates. Sam! Dodge! Bill! Kraft! Eddie! George! Tony! He called out their names like a mantra, pausing after each name to listen for a response. Over and over again, he cried out into the void. He couldn't see anyone or anything. Blind and desperate, he tried to glimpse any signs of life in the night. He called out until his voice failed him and then called out some more. The waves were getting worse. All he could do now was hold on for dear life and tried to ride out the maelstrom as the Bering Sea tried everything it could to kill him. Hours later, still at the mercy of the waves, he was numb and broken from head to toe. His consciousness would flitter out of his grasp briefly until the next wave slammed into him. He hung on to the ragged edge of sanity. His adrenal gland was as overworked as the rest of him. Passing out would be a death sentence. At least he was still shivering. Hypothermia had not taken his life from him yet by some miracle, but he knew he only had so long before it dragged him down. Inevitably, he started slipping in and out more and more. He was caught between the mental image of his dead friends below the waves and his girls back home. In this fragile, delirious state, he passed into the black oblivion. "What keeps the clouds in the sky, Daddy?" "Jane, Jane, Jane," Sam murmured in a feverish sleep. Slowly, he clawed his way from the deep sea of his memories. He opened one eye slowly. It was light out. Every inch of him hurt. His pain had its own pains. He lay helpless in the life raft. Unwanted and unwelcome, the reality of his situation gradually slipped into his mind. He was alone. Had anyone else made it? He had no way to tell. The storm had broken, but the sun seemed to be setting again. Brilliant red sunset filled the sky. He lay and looked like he had never seen the sky before. How long had he been out? Was he grateful? He didn't know how to feel. It was then the sailor in him noticed something. He wasn't just bobbing around on the ocean. His life raft was gently bumping into something. He took a deep breath and mustered his body to move. On his hands and knees, he fussed and fought towards the tented opening and shoved his head through the gap into the sunset world. There were rocks around him, slippery, wet, jagged rocks. He turned his head to the left and saw the unbelievable land. A craggy coastline lay before him. The rocks were light gray and covered with greenish-yellow moss. Only 50 feet away was a craggy beach. It was stark but reachable. He gathered up his bravery and slipped out of the life raft. The water was too deep to stand in, but he held onto the lead rope from the life raft. He used it to keep from slipping his head under the water. Paddling with his one free hand and kicking his stiff legs, he worked his way to the beach. It was hard. Gumby suits, ironically, aren't designed for swimming in. They were designed to keep you buoyant and dry. Then a foot touched the bottom, and then again. Before he knew it, he was walking, and when he was standing with the water at his level of his waist, he let go of the precious life raft. He surged forward, caring about nothing but the beach. He climbed over a partially submerged boulder, and then he set his foot on dry land. The beach wasn't sandy. It was covered in fist-sized round stones. He bent over on his hands and knees, shaking and feeling more grateful than any other time in his life for these small stones that hurt his knees. He turned his head and saw the life raft floating back out to sea. He slowly, shakily rose to his feet. He pulled the hood of the survival suit off his head and closed his eyes. He turned his aching, sore neck around and stretched. The icy wind sliced through his wet hair, but he didn't care. He opened his eyes and turned from the sea to land. What he saw made him drop his jaw in disbelief. Perched above him on the top of a cliff stood a tall lighthouse. It was of a design that he had never seen before. It was tall and thin like any lighthouse, but it looked old and badly weathered. It was made out of concrete and the same stone as everything else. Ruddy lines of rust ran down its side from any metal part of its design. In the red sunset, it looked almost like it had grown out of the cliff itself. The glassy windows of the lantern room were capped by a green tarnished top. The light was fading fast. He knew what he had to do. Somehow he needed to take refuge in the silent citadel before it was too dark to do so. Sam surveyed the beach, looking for anything that could take him up from the waterline to the lighthouse. A few hundred yards away, he could see a single iron pole sticking out of a gap in the rocks. Clumsily, he waddled his way towards this meager landmark. This would be easier if he were to abandon the damn Gumby suit. The feet had no tread, and if he wasn't careful, he would slip and fall. But the survival suit had protected him thus far, and he wasn't ready to face the elements without it yet. Eventually, he came to a break in the rocks. A stone staircase had been carved into the naked stone. The pole was part of a long, rusted and broken railing. Looking up and trying to follow the staircase with his eyes, Sam was suddenly overcome with dizziness. He lowered himself onto the first step and held the pole for support. He was standing on dry land, but his inner ear hadn't got the message. He still felt like he was heaving about on the waves. The curious sensation was familiar. Anytime you spend an extended time on the ocean and then walk ashore, it took some time to feel like the ground was immovable under your feet. He took another rallying deep breath and tried to stand again. To his dismay, his legs didn't obey. He gritted his teeth and tried again. His legs shook uncontrollably until he stopped trying to stand. He was mentally and physically broken. He was frayed and felt thin all over. What was the point? He was lost and alone. Everyone was dead from his crew, plus there had been no time to send out an SOS. There was a good chance that no one had noticed they had gone missing yet. And when they did notice, there would be no coordinates to set up a search grid. It would be so easy to just lay down on his side and give up. He closed his eyes and silently wept. Sam was a tough son of a bitch, but everything has its limit. As the sun slowly sank into the sea behind him, he let his mind drift. His exhaustion was deeper than the sea itself. Slowly he began to relax his body as despair poisoned his heart. What keeps the clouds in the sky, Daddy? Sam's eyes popped open. He took his left hand and pressed it onto the bulge buried in his right shirt pocket. He pictured his girl standing on soft, warm grass looking down on his bent back. Up, he whispered. He balled his hands into fists within the survival suit. Up, he shouted. Somewhere, some startled seabirds took flight. He had to climb up. On his hands and knees, he started. One step at a time. How long had it been since he made landfall? He looked over his shoulder and saw the bottom of the sun kissing the ocean. His heart quickened. In jerky, exhausted spurts, his muscles worked on the problem. He knew it would be dangerous to rush, but he could feel his old friend Panic starting to creep back in. What was it his grandfather had told him about walking on the deck of a boat? Don't run, you'll fall in the water. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Every stair-step felt like a mountain, but slowly he crawled upwards. Higher and higher he climbed until he could look over the edge of the stairs and down to the beach below. It was getting very hard to see. The dusk was reclaiming the land. But upwards he kept going. He lost himself in the effort, devoted his entire waking mind to the task. It was like doing anything physical and repetitive. That should have been his job title, like doing sit-ups or setting crab pots. One after another until the job is done. He was actually sweating under all the layers when he finally looked up, and to his surprise, he was kneeling before a massive rusted steel door hanging wide open. Just a few more feet and he'd be inside. He crawled the last few feet and he was finally inside. There was only a hint of light coming from behind him, and he could barely see anything inside the lighthouse. Its beacon light was long extinguished, and its interior might as well have been a tomb. But Sam wasn't thinking about all these facts. Hello, he called out. Is there anybody here? His voice echoed off the concrete and stone around him, but there was no reply. Hello, he cried out again as he started shuffling inside. He searched around for something in the encroaching blackness to help him orient himself and to understand his environment. Anything at all. Dimly across the room, he saw something green. He squinted, trying to make it out. A dim green light. It was an old industrial light on the far wall. He shuffled towards it. When he got close, he reached out and felt some kind of machine below the light. It seemed to be round with many fins radiating out from the center device. It was inside a metal frame. It felt like some kind of generator. The fins were probably for cooling. Increased surface area helps with that kind of thing. Being on big fishing boats and fumbling around in crowded engine rooms informed his understanding in the dark. He leaned forward so he could feel around the machine better, and when his face inevitably pressed against it, he stopped. Warm. It was warm. He stopped, breathless for a second. How? He couldn't feel the thrum of any machinery nearby. Maybe it was batteries. Maybe they were solar-powered or something like that. But the question of why was slipping away. It was warm. He lay on his side and pulled at the oversized zipper of his Gumby suit. He peeled it away like a cocoon. He pushed it down to his waist. The cement floor was slightly warm against his rough hands. His whole body got the message, and he started shivering violently. How deep into hypothermia was he? This warm machine was waking up his muscles. They cried out in pain, but he didn't care. It was a miracle that he hadn't died 10 times in the waves. A miracle that hypothermia hadn't paralyzed him completely for some reason. And this machine was a miracle for being warm. Sam pulled off layers until his bare skin could touch the machine. He was warming up more and more. He pulled himself closer to the device. "Thank you, God. Thank you, God," he mumbled to a deity he no longer believed in, mumbling over and over again. He softly fell into a deep sleep. He rested his cold cheek against Anne's warm breast and smelled her soft skin, his summer girl in the yellow summer dress. Seabirds cawed and called to each other, dancing in the sky. Sam floated up there with them, weightless and free. As he floated, he began to feel his stomach turn. Nausea ripped through his body like claws at the flesh of his belly. He sat up and vomited all over his Gumby suit and the floor. He rolled over onto his other side and heaved. The pain was beyond anything he had felt so far. He tried to cry out, but was captured, and he gurgled from the vomit. There was nothing in his stomach but bile. What was he throwing up if he was this dehydrated? The light pouring in through the door revealed the answer. The floor was covered in vomit and blood. This wasn't good. His mind turned over and over. He must have taken more of a pounding than he thought in the storm. He stood up and slowly began to peel off his Gumby suit. His skin was puffy and felt sunburnt. He left the Gumby suit on the ground, discarded it like a snake shedding its skin. He looked around. The device that had saved his life was old and painted a greenish gray. It definitely looked like some kind of generator. Rust dripped from every bolt and fastening. The top of it was cracked and partially open. He put his hand over the top and could feel the heat coming out of it. What was it? He looked on the wall above, where there were a few rusted triangular signs. They were corroded so badly that their meaning was lost. His left hand was puffy and red. A thought occurred to him that, in his delirium, he roasted himself like a pig on a spit in front of whatever gave this generator its fire. He looked around the room. Everything was crumbling, rusted or decayed. There was some yellow writing painted on the wall by the staircase that led up to the lantern room. He stared at it for a full 30 seconds before he realized that it was in another language. He looked around the room for more words. There was a plaque on the same wall. Sam shuffled over to it and brushed the filth away from the embossed letters. It was definitely not English, and even to his untrained eye he could tell he was staring at Russian. His head was beginning to pound, and panic reared its ugly head again. He was on the wrong side of the Bering Sea. What kind of storm could have spirited him all the way to Russia? This was bad. No one was looking for him. His jaw dropped. No one would even think he was in the wrong country. How close to Russian waters had Captain Chris decided to fish? There was no chance that the captain had gotten lost. He came this close to Russia for some reason, but Sam couldn't fathom why. There was no questioning the dead. He was in Russia. His head felt like it was going to split open. With his hands on his head, he ascended the stairs to the lamp room. Looking around, the pieces of the lantern were laying everywhere. It had fallen apart long, long ago. The glass of the windows were fragmentary, and the cold Bering Strait winds whistled through all the gaps and missing windows. He walked as close to the edge as he dared and looked out at the ocean stretching out to the horizon. A horrible knot twisted in his stomach, and he threw up a little more in his mouth, coughing and sputtering. He turned his attention to the land, and his eyes throbbed from the headache. He squinted and stared into the distance, his gaze fixated on something that looked a little unnatural. Some kind of strange, mossy boulder or rock? Wait, there was smoke coming from it. He shuffled closer to the edge of the rail that warned of the deadly drop he was so close to finding. It was unmistakable now. There was a small house in the distance. He giggled for a second. It looked like only a few miles. Surely, after everything else, a few miles would feel like nothing. He felt steadier on his feet immediately. Salvation. There was smoke coming out of the chimney. Girls, I'm coming. I'm coming, girls, he said with a hoarse rattle. Back outside, Sam walked. His rubber boots allowed him to have better footing on the stone steps. He was weak and wobbly, and it took everything not to start vomiting again. Despite everything, he felt a giddiness. The summer girl in the summer dress was waiting for him. All he had to do was walk down the lane to the little cottage with the fire in its hearth. His whole body was trembling when he came to the path that he hadn't seen in the darkness, the path that led from the stone steps towards the little house. He couldn't wait to tell Baby Jane about his journey. "Daddy has a story to tell you, Baby Jane," he mumbled to himself. His right hip seemed like it was rusted and jammed up, but he didn't care. He limped forward, every step bringing him closer and closer. He could see the sun glinting off glass windows facing him. They were more beautiful than any diamond. Something warm and wet was running down his legs. It was too much to be sweat. He felt his bowels evacuate. It was almost a relief. It warmed his legs quite a bit. He looked down to see the brown trickling down his rubber boot. "I'm sorry, Baby Jane. Get Mommy to run a hot bath for me." It didn't matter. He could make out the little house even better, and it wasn't alone. As he got closer, he saw more trails of smoke coming from the area. Was there a town over the hill? "Daddy's coming, baby." He couldn't tell whether he was talking or whether the words were in his mind. Take another step. Take another step. Over and over, just like his job description. Closer and closer he got. He could see the pile of firewood stacked against the small cabin. It was rustic. The walls were all made of different sections of mismatching wooden planks with patchy green paint chipping off to expose the weathered wood below. A simple fence ran around it, and as he got closer, he could hear sheep bleating. "Help!" he croaked. His throat was full of broken glass. He swallowed the burning spit and bile in his mouth. "Help!" It was no more than a whisper. "I have to get closer," he thought. Unfortunately, his body had other ideas. Everything started to happen very slowly. To his fevered mind, he was gently floating, but the pain screamed at him when he hit the ground. He let out a faint whimper. That was all he had. There was nothing left. He panted and his eyes wouldn't open. He giggled a little. He felt ridiculous. Would they even know he was an American when they found him? He should have written his name on his underpants. He giggled again. "Sorry, Baby Jane. All clouds fall eventually." He lay face down for what seemed to be an eternity. He conversed with his girls like he was sending prayers to heaven. He thought about what his father would have said if he could see him. "Lazy, that's what you are." Hadn't he done his best? Had he fought hard enough? He could almost hear someone talking, but they were words he didn't understand. They sounded like the babbling sounds Baby Jane had made when she was still learning how to talk. Was that a woman or a man? Some force rolled him over, but his eyes refused to open. His face hurt, and he reached with his hands to force his eyes open. But someone picked him up under his arms. Someone was dragging him. "You don't have to carry me, Pop. I can walk," he tried to say. He heard words he understood. English. American? It seemed to ask. "Yes," he croaked. There was now shouting all around him. He was lifted up onto something flat. When it lurched forward, he rolled on his side and vomited. The poor people around him gasped and spoke in worried tones. He tried to mumble an apology, but his lips felt fat and unresponsive. He was picked up and put down again, but this time there was the sound of an engine. He was losing consciousness again. The bumps and bangs still hurt, but it was like the pain was something other, something separate from him. And then there was only blackness. There was a bright light, and he sat up violently. He was surrounded by people wearing yellow hazmat suits. They staggered backwards from the start he gave them. His vision was blurry. "Get the hell away from me," he roared. The voice that came out of his mouth was alien and unrecognizable. The people in hazmat suits put their hands up to try and calm him. One of them was holding a machine that was making clicking noises. It sounded like a Geiger counter out of a movie. "What the hell have you done to me?" he growled. A man wearing a white cap and doctor scrubs emerged from behind the line of hazmat suits. He rushed around the bed Sam was lying in. "What are you doing?" he asked, but the doctor grabbed an intravenous line and injected something from a hypodermic into it. "No," he cried and tried to grab the doctor, but his hands were restrained. He couldn't lift his arms. Darkness once again engulfed him. When he awoke the next day, he did slowly. Red sunlight pressed in through his shut eyelids. His heart felt like it was trying to escape his chest. He coughed and choked. His head was foggy, but his right arm and his chest burned. His face felt swollen, and if he moved in any direction, the pain was beyond anything he had ever felt before. He let out a low groan and forced his left eye open. The light hurt his eyes too, but not as much as the rest of his face. He lifted his right hand and tried to touch his face, but his arms were bandaged tightly, and they felt like they had lead weights attached to them. He was in a hospital room, but it obviously wasn't one like the ones back in the States. There were different colors and smells that gave away that he was in a foreign place. He remembered the Russian lettering inside the lighthouse. How long ago had that been? He had the vague sense that some time had passed. A door opened and he looked to his left. A woman wearing green scrubs and holding a clipboard stepped through. She stopped in her tracks and looked at him in disbelief. She immediately spun around and quickly shot back out the door. He lay in the bed and tried to focus on the ceiling. Breathing wasn't easy. Had he been in a car accident on the way to the hospital? He wondered about what had hurt him this bad as the machine quietly beeped away. After a short time, a man entered the room. He was short and his gray hair was slicked back under his white cap. He walked to the edge of the bed and sighed. "We didn't think you were going to wake up," he said in a thick Russian accent. "I'm in Russia," Sam said weakly. "Ah," replied the doctor. "You are very far from home, Samuel." "Shipwreck," Sam said. "We know. We found your lifeboat." "You were a fisherman?" he said as he sat down on a stool, bringing his face close enough for Sam's eye to focus. "Yes," said Sam. "No matter the place, a fisherman is a fisherman. Your clothes didn't look too different from the ones of the men who rescued you. What happened to me?" The doctor took a deep breath and looked down for a second before meeting his gaze again. "I'm sure you have quite a story to tell about how you washed up in Siberian waters. We know the part of your story that happened after washing up." "I took shelter in a lighthouse, I think," Sam said with labored breathing. "Yes, that was an honest mistake. It was not your fault. But here's the tragic part. Back in the Soviet time, these lighthouses were powered by radioisotope thermal generators. Beta M RTG generators are powered by strontium-90. This is very bad stuff. After the Soviet Union fell apart, these terrible things were forgotten. The village near the lighthouse had a few fatalities before they figured that they should stay away from it. They call forgotten radioactive devices orphan sources." "I don't understand," Sam said. "Radiation. I'm afraid your dose was fatal," the doctor said with genuine sadness in his eyes. "What? No, that doesn't make sense. I need to get home. I have a baby girl," Sam said. "I'm afraid you won't be leaving this hospital." "I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you something else, but it's true. It's a miracle you're awake. I'm sure the pain must be a lot." "I'm a tough bastard," Sam said and tried to smile. The doctor chuckled despite himself. Yes, you are." There was a moment of awkward silence, and then Sam asked, "Can I make a phone call?" "We can try. I'll ask. Someone might be able to help with that. But you need to understand that you've received severe radiation burns to the whole front of your upper body. I'm amazed you're not screaming in pain." "I'm not going to lie. I feel pretty messed up," Sam said. Messed up. I like those words. Very American. "I need to call home, please," Sam pleaded. "Yes, I'm sure you do. I'm going to go see what I can do." The doctor stood up. "Rest now. I'll find a way for you to call home." "Thank you, doctor," Sam said with a lump in his throat. Quiet tears ran down Sam's face. He tried to wrap his mind around what he had been told. Radioactive lighthouses, orphan source. The words were heavy in his heart. He squeezed his eyes closed. He wanted to yell. He wanted to scream. He wanted to drag that innocent doctor back into the room so he could tell Sam that it was something else. They had to be mistaken. Maybe he could still fight his injuries. Yes, that's what he needed to do. After everything, Sam wasn't going to give up now that he was safe in a hospital. Miracles happen all the time. It had nothing to do with God or angels. It was about determination and the human spirit. "Gotta fight this," Sam whispered. He was so tired. The pain was deep inside him and all around him. He couldn't move, but inside he wanted to fight. He wanted to get up and walk out of this hospital. People are given fatal diagnoses all the time and pull through, he reassured himself. I just need some rest, he whispered. I'll rest and heal. He felt the Bering Sea pulling him down again. I need to rest. Sometime later, he tried to open his eyes again. It was dark and quiet except for the rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the machine to his right. Someone was holding his hand in the darkness. Who's there? He whispered. There was no reply, just a gentle pressure on his bandaged hand. Anne, is that you? He whispered with hope. After a moment, she replied, Yes. You made it, thank God. The machine beeped a little slower. I'm not giving up. I'm coming home, he rasped. Yes, she said. Is baby Jane here? I must look like death. Don't let her see me like this. It'll give her nightmares. She can see me soon enough. Yes, she said. He could almost see her through his closed eyes, his summer girl in the yellow summer dress, his rock, his anchor, and his port in a storm. I love you, Anne. I'll always love you. Nothing will keep me from coming home, he said with all his remaining strength. Yes, she said, choking back a sob. The machine beeped very slowly, ticking away the moments with her holding his hand. She was here and everything was going to be all right. I never gave up. I kept fighting. Yes, she said. I love you, he said one more time, and the machine beeped slower and slower. He could almost hear baby Jane. Daddy, what keeps the clouds in the sky? The clouds are gone, baby Jane. Nothing but warm blue skies, sweetie, Sam said to Jane in his mind. The machine beeped slower and slower. Sam was floating on a warm sea. His father was there smiling. You did good, kid, he said. The machine went silent. The nurse in the green scrubs stood up, still holding his hand, then gently placed it on his chest as he slowly exhaled one last time. She wiped the tears from her eyes and took his pulse for the final time. She then turned and left the room. Sam lay motionless. The sea had finally claimed him. The end. Well, I hope you liked that. If you did, like and subscribe, and I'll write another story. Maybe I'll try a comedy next time, though. We'll see. Sorry about the low quality of the audio. I'm working with what I have, which isn't much. I don't have any professional equipment right now. So I'm doing my best. Hope you liked the story. Like and subscribe.